When Aster was dragged to the Elmheim main house, he already knew this was not going to be a simple family meeting. The elders had called him there to judge him for the chaos he caused, and the moment he stood before them, the tension turned deadly. In front of the entire room, Zenith demanded proof of Hefried's loyalty by ordering him to kill his own son. But instead of bowing his head, Hefried chose Aster without hesitation, even if it meant the destruction of his entire house. That was the moment everything changed. With no more reason to stay silent, Aster tore off his shirt and revealed the 7 wings on his back, leaving the elders frozen in shock. The reason this power terrifies everyone is simple. The wing crest is the source of magical power, and no human in hundreds of years has ever possessed 7 wings. That level of power was said to belong only to the Spirit Clan, the very origin of the crest themselves. But how did he get this power? In a harsh, cold place, Aster, with a battered body, approaches his father, and an overwhelming killing intent after claiming that his father sent him into an ambush to get rid of him. The man admits this, calling Aster a wingless one, which is why he has to die to stop bringing ridicule to the House of Elmheim. When talking about the Elmheim family, they are the greatest martial house on the continent, and they are tasked with protecting the royal family. The head of the house is Aster's father, Roderick Elmheim, who is the only one who has 7 wings in the entire kingdom. He once saved Aster, who was left on the brink of death in a snowstorm, and to pay this debt, Aster did everything Roderick asked of him. However, Aster had nothing to repay his father with because he had no wings. The wing crest is basically a proof of one's magical power, and the more wings, the greater the mana. Since he was the only one in the ducal house who had no wings, his siblings basically called Aster wingless. Nonetheless, Aster continued taking up the sword to practice every day, hoping that one day his devotion would be rewarded. In the end, he and his squad got sent on a mission that was destined to fail, but he managed to survive the ordeal. Now, he is wounded and exhausted, but he holds a grudge against his father, who discarded him. Aster tells Roderick that he believed in him and even followed him, but he stabbed him in the back as a reward. Roderick mocks him, asking him what expectations he, as a tool, thought he had, and he tells him to leave because he is done using him. However, deep down, Aster is raging with anger, and he dashes toward Roderick with his sword. He hates himself for following Roderick blindly while calling himself a pathetic idiot. Aster's sword lands on Roderick but leaves no single scratch. Suddenly, Aster is restrained from behind by a mana sword and 2 young men appear behind him. One of them cuts off his left arm, while the other cuts off his right leg. Aster screams in pain as he crashes to the ground with blood pouring out of his mouth. It turns out that these 2 are his brothers, and they mock him as he lies motionless in the snow, telling him that he will always remain wingless, no matter what happens. They even mock him, telling him that he looks so good while crawling on the ground. Aster punches the ground in frustration, asking Roderick why he bothered rescuing him when he was a baby, when he knew he was just going to discard him later on. Roderick bends down to tell Aster that he's getting everything wrong because he never had any use for him in the first place. Roderick mentions that what he needed was the power of the 7 wings that were residing inside Aster. Aster is confused by this, and Roderick adds that his mother was actually pretty useful because she bore the seed that would serve his purposes. After saying this, Roderick walks off, leaving Aster with several questions in his head. He stretches his hand toward Roderick, telling him to tell him everything, but his brothers finish him off with excitement by pushing their swords into his back. As he slowly loses consciousness, Aster questions his purpose if he was only born to die meaninglessly in the first place. Suddenly, everything becomes so warm, and by the time he opens his eyes again, he finds himself in thick snow. He looks around frantically and realizes that he is in a baby's body, leaving him wondering if this body is really his. Sleeping beside him is a dead woman who was clutching him in her arms. Aster uses the power of search to check everywhere, and he realizes that armed men are looking for him and the dead woman. Surprisingly, he hears that they are working for Roderick, and they plan to recover him so that they can return him to Roderick. This immediately jerks back his memory to what he was told about how he was found on a night just like that during a blizzard. It suddenly dawns on Aster that he might have returned to the past. However, he doesn't want to conclude yet, and he figures out that he will confirm this later, but he has to escape first. He knows that staying in the same position would only let him end up in Roderick's hands again. Even though he is a baby, Aster starts crawling through the harsh snow with mana infused in his hands, just so he can get away as fast as he can. Even though the weather is harsh and he is already getting tired, Aster has no desire to hold back because he was always crawling in his past life, and he plans to do the same thing to survive no matter what. After crawling so far, he ends up passing out, and moments later, he is discovered by Hefried, the head of House Hefried, who is a viscount and his daughter. Hefried carries Aster in his hands, wondering why there is a baby in such a weird place. Hefried looks at the trail left in the snow by Aster and realizes just how far he has come, leaving him totally blown away. But at the same time, with questions of who Aster is. When Aster finally wakes up, he finds himself being stared at by a bunch of little girls who want to play with him. Aster panics because he can't understand what the actual hell is going on around him. Scared of whatever is going on, he jumps off and starts crawling away, but the girls chase after him, telling him to stop. Aster's survival instincts kick in and he continues crawling, aiming to get away from them. He ends up propelling himself into the sky with his magic, and he soon realizes that he is screwed as he starts descending to the ground with no way to stop it. Just when he is about to hit the ground and go splash, he is caught by the Viscount, who teases him for being a mysterious child. Sweat runs down his face with the realization that he almost died. Just then, Aster takes a look at the man, and this is when he realizes that he is in the hands of Hifrid, the Viscount of the Roderick domain. Aster freaks out because there is no way in the world he just found himself in another Elmheim house. Basically, Hifrid is the head of the Viscount family, which is a branch of the Elmheim family. He was one of the two wings that were once entrusted with protecting the royal family. However, Aster is even more confused because Hifrid should have died in some trash civil war, which ended in the total collapse of the Viscount family. This basically confirms his fear that he has gone back to the past. However, he is left in utter shambles because he was trying to run away from Roderick and ended up in his brother's hands. Hifrid's wife also carries Aster in her arms, talking about how surprised she is that Aster's magic went out of control to launch him into the sky. The woman figures out that Aster was trying to escape because he was scared, and she kisses him on the forehead to show him that he is in good hands. The woman strokes his cheeks, causing Aster to relax. Hifrid then tells his wife that Aster possesses tremendous power, and the crest on his back is proof of that. The woman takes Aster to the mirror to check out the crest on his back, and they are blown away to see that it is 7 wings. Even Aster is surprised that he has the crest of 7 wings on his body. This is when he remembers what Roderick told him before he was killed. Aster finally figures out that the dude basically saved him so he could take the 7 wings for himself. Aster is even more pissed when he realizes this because he was called a freaking wingless all through his past life just because Roderick stole what was his. Hifrid's wife then asks him what he plans to do with the child. The moment Aster hears this, he freaks out because he is not about to let the power fall into the Elmheim family since he needs it to get revenge on Roderick. Shockingly, Hifrid tells his wife that they should adopt Aster because he is still a young one who can't fly on their own. Hifrid mentions that he will take responsibility until Aster is able to take care of himself. Just then, the room's door opens and the girls crash on the floor, revealing that they have been listening all this time. The girls admit that they were curious because they were worried about Aster. The girls let off a bright smile because they finally have a baby brother. The woman of the house then gives him the name Aster. 10 years after this, Hifrid, Aster, and one of his sisters, Alfin, head to the sword dance assembly, which is held annually by a certain duke family under the Elmheim umbrella. It is basically a social gathering for martial arts noble families, and it is a place for nobles to deepen their faith, while showing off the strength of swordsman candidates who carry the family name. The moment Hifrid and his children arrive at the location, the other nobles and spectators waste no time, as they start whispering. The people make fun of the Viscount family, saying they have come to embarrass themselves again. They also know about Aster, who was adopted into the family because they couldn't produce an heir of their own. They are pissed at just how much disgrace the Viscount family has brought to the Elmheim family. Alfin can hear everything they are saying behind their backs, and she urges Aster to stay strong and not let any of it get to him. Alfin tells Aster that whoever shows weakness is crushed, and while saying this, Aster can see her hands trembling from anger. Hifrid also tells Aster that what he is currently seeing is the current position of the Viscount family. Hifrid tells him that this is what he wanted to show him, and he asks him if he is disappointed by everything he has witnessed. However, Aster assures his father that he is fine with being in such a hostile environment. Hifrid laughs out loud when he hears this, telling Aster that his stance is quite reassuring. Apparently, in his past life, Aster made his debut in the social society as a disgrace to the Elmheim family, which is why where they are holds bitter memories. However, he is now a totally different person because the 7 wings have returned. Aster looks up to see his past brothers who killed him, staring at him from the window, and Aster is ultimately eager to make a glorious social debut. They are in an era where knights ruled, and might was the mastery of the blade, which was the absolute pinnacle of swordsmanship. Basically, the absolute symbol that embodied everything was none other than the wing crest. Standing on the balcony to watch the duels, Alfin talks about how overwhelming everything is. Alfin finally realizes why Furin and Flair were not interested in coming. Aster, on the other hand, can't forget how he was embarrassed during the whole thing in his past life. Alfin notices that he is lost in thought, and she calls his name to jerk him back to reality, asking if he is nervous. Alfin doesn't blame him if he is nervous because it is his first sword dance festival. Aster assures her that he is not nervous, but feels nostalgic instead. In fact, everything is loathsome to him. Hifrid then tells the kids that he has to leave because he has a meeting he needs to attend. Hifrid tells Aster that he is leaving his sister in his hands, but Alfin protests, reminding her father that she is a year older than Aster. Aster teases her, telling her that she is clumsy, which is why he is in charge. Hifrid then tells Aster that there are many people his age in the gathering, and he can use the opportunity to make friends and connections. However, he whispers to him, telling him to make sure that no one finds out about the 7 wings. As he walks off, Aster is left in a difficult position because he knows that what his father is asking him is easier said than done. In fact, Aster is left wondering how he is going to socialize when everyone appears to be hostile toward him. Suddenly, Alphen sees Aster walking away, and she asks him where he is heading. Aster replies that he is leaving to make some friends, and he soon arrives at where Roderick's sons are. The redhead, Dallas, asks Aster who he is, and Aster introduces himself to the dude with a smile on his face, revealing that he is his younger brother. Aster mentions that he saw Dallas from outside, and he decides to come say hello to him. Dallas is totally confused until his brother Grion explains to him that Aster is the kid adopted by the Viscount family. The moment Dallas figures out who Aster is, he starts laughing to mock him, saying he finally understands why Aster has the F initials in his name instead of the regular A initials. Aster stays mute because he can't forget how the two killed him in his past life. Aster can't believe that he was always intimidated by them in his past life, but looking at them now, he realizes that they are just a bunch of kids playing dress-up. Just then, Alphen shows up, telling Aster to leave the dudes alone. She's about to drag him away when Dallas calls her name to mock her too. He asks her if she is still hiding behind her father's back. He teases her, telling her to come over and keep them company, as if she were an escort. Alphen ultimately turns around to tell Dallas that she is not interested in whatever he is saying. She reminds Dallas that there is no master-servant relationship between the main and branch families. Alphen then proceeds to try to drag him away, even though Aster claims he is not done talking yet. Dallas decides to take things up a notch by mocking Alphen, telling his gang that Alphen's father was the knight who couldn't protect the king and had his hand cut off by Roderick as punishment. Dallas mocks her, telling her that he is glad he doesn't have the blood of a loser flowing through his veins. Alphen cannot swallow the insult, and she turns back, screaming at Dallas, telling him to take back what he just said because she is not just going to allow him to insult her father. Dallas piles on the misery by spitting out wine on her. Dallas tells Alphen that she was born into a family of nothing but useless women who can't inherit the title. He then adds that they are not in a ballroom, while telling her to wear some rags so that next time it won't be a problem when she gets drenched. Before coming to the gathering, Aster was initially worried that he wouldn't feel any anger even after seeing Dallas and Grion. However, what they just displayed has taken away his worry. Aster then calls Dallas's name before throwing a bottle of wine at him, and the moment he catches it, Aster cuts it in half with his sword, spilling the wine on Dallas's head. Dallas is shocked when this happens, and Aster just teases him, telling him that the content of the bottle is nothing more than grape juice, which fits a bratty noble like him. 3 years earlier, during a duel, Aster had lost control of his power, which almost resulted in the deaths of his sisters. It took Hifrid's intervention to be able to stop Aster's incredible power, and this was the first time Hifrid would see the 7 wings in action. Hifrid wonders if the power can even be controlled by him or by Aster himself. Now in the present day, Hifrid is still in the middle of the meeting when a servant rushes in to tell Hifrid that something is off. They ask the servant what the issue is, and he lets them know that the sons of the branch family and the main family are in a duel. Hifrid is shocked when he hears this, and he immediately rushes off. He meets Alphen on the way, and he asks her what happened. On the other hand, the elders of the family have rushed over to the arena to watch the duel. Alphen and Hifrid also join them as they stand on the balcony to watch the duel. The elders, on the other hand, are excited because they know how chaotic everything might become depending on the outcome of the duel. Dallas scolds Aster, calling him a fool for picking a fight with their ducal house. He reminds him that he is just a half-breed that was born in the wild. Dallas asks Aster if he is foolish enough not to understand the power difference between them because he wields a 4-wing crest. The people are blown away by Dallas's potential, and they believe that this is exactly why he is the ducal heir. Wielding 2 swords, Dallas teases Aster, telling him to show everyone his crest unless he is embarrassed to show it. Aster then replies that he is not as shameful as he, who is running around flaunting a mere pattern. Dallas is pissed when he hears this, but Aster is not done. Aster tells Dallas that he has to apologize to Alphen if he ends up winning the duel, and Dallas agrees to this, but he tells Aster that he is going to turn him into his own personal dog if he ends up winning. Dallas dashes toward Aster, threatening to work him to death after he wins the duel. He swings his sword at Aster, but Aster blocks the attack. Nonetheless, the force from the attack is powerful enough to push Aster backwards and leave his hands vibrating. Dallas goes on the attack again while telling Aster that what he is witnessing is the power of the 4-wing crest. He continues swinging at him, forcing Aster to maintain a defensive posture. One of the elders watching the fight admits that Dallas's swordsmanship is immature, but he is able to compensate for it with his overwhelming magical power, which is why those who bear the crest will always have an advantage. In simple analogy, if the magic housed in 1-wing crest is like the flame of a candle, then the magic hidden within 4 wings is more or less an explosion. Dallas keeps up the pressure, overwhelming Aster and asking him where his initial excitement disappeared to. He asks him if he wasn't threatening to make him apologize before. Dallas continues teasing Aster while swinging at him, urging him to show him his power. Moments later, Dallas lands what he believes would have ended the duel, but Aster blocks the strike as aura swells around his body. Aster sends Dallas flying backward while telling him that he talks too much. Aster has basically been learning for the past 10 years, just so he can get the chance to enact vengeance on those who have wronged him. Aster leaps toward Dallas, landing a powerful strike that causes Dallas to lose balance. Dallas crashes to his knees, trying to block the attack, and Grion is shocked to see that his brother is being pushed back. Dallas cannot believe what is happening to him since he is a four-winged crest owner, but he is being overwhelmed by someone he calls a lowlife. Everyone watching the fight is left in shock as Dallas tries hard to stay in the fight. On the other hand, Hifrid is worried that things are going to get really bad. Aster looks totally immersed in the fight as he remembers how Dallas and Grion took his arm in his past life before killing him. Seeing his life flash before his eyes, Dallas starts begging, telling Aster to stop, and at the same time, the Viscount screams at Aster, telling him to restrain himself. The clash between the two ends in a massive explosion, and when the smoke clears, Aster has cut off Dallas's sword. He barely missed his head and only smacked the sword in between his legs. Seeing just how close he is to death, Dallas soiled himself, and Aster mocks him just as he mocked Alphen. He tells him to come wrapped in rags the next time so he doesn't mind getting soaked. Aster sheathes his sword with the declaration that he is no longer Aster the Wingless, and just by realizing this, he is relieved already. Suddenly, Aster feels an overwhelming presence behind him, and when he turns around, he realizes that it is none other than his arch-nemesis, Roderick. Meanwhile, the spectators are all left in shock because no one expected Aster, who is from the branch family, to knock out the son of the main family. However, they know things have gotten complicated because there is no way Roderick is going to stay silent after getting dragged through the mud. Roderick walks into the arena and moves toward Aster, but Aster doesn't even take his head down as he stares into Roderick's eyes. Roderick stands towering over him, but Aster maintains his aura as he looks into the man's eyes. Dallas then grabs his father, whom he believes is there to help him. Just like the spoiled brat he is, he tells his father that Aster has defied the main family even though he is a half-breed. Dallas urges his father to use his power to deal with Aster, but suddenly, Roderick pushes his sword into Dallas's hand. He pushes his hand into the ground with the sword in it, ultimately shattering his right hand. Everyone watching this, including Grion, is left in shock, and Roderick berates Dallas, telling him that he has just dragged the name of their family through the mud, but he still has the guts to smile. Roderick then pulls out his sword, and Hifrid has an idea of where this is going. He screams at Roderick, telling him to stop, but Roderick raises his sword, ready to cut down his son for embarrassing him, while telling him that he doesn't have what it takes to hold a sword. Just then, Aster jumps in between Dallas and his father, and Roderick asks him why he is interrupting his judgment on Dallas. Aster replies that Dallas hasn't apologized to Alphen yet, so he can't die. He tells Roderick that he is free to do whatever he wants to Dallas after he has apologized to Alphen. Roderick is pissed that Aster is trying to act like he is a member of the family, even though he was adopted. Aster replies, telling him that he is the son of the Viscount, and even if they are not related by blood, the pride of a knight and the weight of a household are things that he has learned well enough from his father. Roderick then decides to use this against Aster, telling him that as a member of the Viscount's house, he has needlessly tarnished the reputation of the main family, which is the pride of the king's sword. Roderick tells Aster that what just happened is not something that can be settled as a mere childhood squabble. He reminds him that Hifrid gave his arm as a prize when he messed up. Roderick then asks him what he plans to sacrifice, but Aster replies to this by telling Roderick that what happened wasn't a mere sibling quarrel, but a legitimate duel. Aster tells Roderick that all he did was answer the insults against the house of the Viscount with his blade. He reminds Roderick of what he said about those who can't avenge themselves have no right to a sword. Aster makes it clear that he has no intention of throwing away even a single strand of his hair. One of the elders, who is an earl, is blown away by Aster's courage, and he refuses to believe that Aster is just 10 years old. Upon hearing what Aster has to say, Roderick tells him to take his stance, and Aster immediately gets into a defensive position. Roderick then lands a hit that sends Aster crashing into the wall, leaving a loud explosion. This leaves everyone shocked and scared that Aster is done for. Hifrid angrily leaps toward his brother with his sword, but Roderick blocks the attack. Hifrid ignores Roderick and rushes over to where Aster is. The dust clears off and he sees Aster's severed sword on the ground, but to his surprise, Aster remains standing with the other half of the sword in his hand, ready to defend himself. He wears an expression of hate on his face, and when Roderick sees this, he just turns around and leaves with Dallas following him. Aster finally loses his balance, but Hifrid catches him. With the last of his strength, Aster tells his father that he protected Alphen just like he promised, and Hifrid commends Aster, telling him that he was magnificent. On the other hand, one of the elders teases Roderick, telling him that he resorted to a childish move. Roderick agrees to this, but says the family's reputation would have been shattered if he had let Aster have his way, which is why he made a slight compromise. The elder then calls Aster a rising star because he had the strength and audacity to stand before the great Roderick. The elders admit that Aster has the best debut into society with the stunt he just pulled. One of the elders says he was actually scared that the Elmheim family might split in two. However, Roderick tells him not to be too happy yet because an era of disruption is upon them. He calls it a storm so great it might divide the world into 2 or 3. When Aster returned to the territory, he indulged himself totally in training. He beats up every one of his sparring partners really easily, with no one to stand against him. They believe that whatever happened at the sword dance assembly must have been a motivation for him. The servants and guards are also happy that Aster beat Dallas up because the main family has been making life hard for them for so long. At the same time, Aster is confident that what he did at the assembly would silence those who have always mocked the Viscount family. However, his real target remains Roderick himself, although he knows he can't beat Roderick with his current level. Aster knows that the wing crest is basically just an indicator of one's rank and latent magic power. However, Aster still cannot draw out the power of the 7 wings. It is known that being born with or not doesn't mean anything if one can use the power to its full potential. Aster wishes that he could test the full power of the 7 wings to its limits without wondering about it rampaging. Before he knows it, he has defeated everyone on the training grounds, and just then, Alphen shows up. She tells Aster that their father is calling for him, and Aster immediately drops everything he is doing. As he walks off, he notices that his sister is wearing a training outfit. He teases her, reminding her that she said the outfit wasn't good, so she hated wearing it. Alphen tells her brother that everything needs balance, and seeing Aster made her rethink that she can't keep going the way she is. She then tells Aster that he would have to train with her when he gets back, and Aster smiles, while urging his sister to go easy on him. Moments later, Aster arrives at his father's office and asks him what he needs. Hifrid tells him to sit down, and when he does, Hifrid reminds Aster that it's been about 10 years since they welcomed him into the family. His father says he was waiting for him to be a bit grown before, but he has changed his mind. He brings out a ring with a red jewel on it and tells Aster that it is the proof of the next head. Hifrid drops the bomb on him, telling him that he wants him to be the next head of the family. Aster says nothing when he hears this, and Hifrid continues by reminding Aster that the Viscount house is in a precarious position. Nonetheless, they are still a branch of the Elmheim family. And since they have their own territory to protect, Hifrid says they can't leave the next head's seat empty. Aster then asks his father if his sisters are okay with this, and Hifrid mentions that he is going to go to the Knight Academy to inform his sisters. Aster replies that he is pretty sure that his sisters, Malfa and Kudo, who are at the Knight Academy, would disagree, especially Kudo. Aster mentions that Kudo basically hates him for being born a boy, not to mention being blessed with the 7 wings. Aster then stands up, telling his father that he can't accept the responsibility of being the next head. He reminds him that he can't even control his magic, and he almost killed his own sister in the process. Aster tells his father that there is nothing that can convince an angry sister, and as he walks away, Hifrid tells him that he has always been skeptical whether Aster is really a kid or not. Hifrid then reveals that he believed that the ring would be a good reward for the sword dance assembly, but it appears that Aster would prefer something else. The man then brings out a box, and he opens it to reveal the magic sword, Gram, which is more or less a dagger. Hifrid tells Aster that this is a sword that can control the 7 wings' power. After their meeting in the office, Hifrid takes Aster into the woods. Aster is surprised that they have to go that far just to show him a sword, and Hifrid lets him know that this is nothing more than a precaution. Hifrid knows he can't take anything for granted since Aster is known to break things quite often, which means the training hall would be the wrong place to try out the sword. Hifrid tells Aster that Gram is a magic sword that is passed down only to the eldest son of the Elmheim family. Hifrid mentions that he intentionally had the sword brought in from the main house because of him. Hifrid then removes the cloth that sheathes the sword, and Aster is shocked to see that it is just a sword with a short base. Hifrid tells Aster that the sword might have no blade, but if he imbues it with magic power, the blade has the potential of being completed by the wielder's magic power. Hifrid then shows him an example of what he is saying by unleashing his magic power, which releases a massive energy blast that destroys everything in its path. This leaves a huge crater in the ground, and Hifrid tells Aster that one would be drained by the sword if one tries to trash magic with it instead. Hifrid mentions that it is a sword with so much history, and he asks Aster if he is willing to give it a try. Aster then collects the sword and he tries it out. To his surprise, his mana starts pouring into the sword on its own, and this sends a powerful blast into the sky. Those at the estate see this, and one of the guards assumes that a comet is falling from the sky. However, his colleague teases him for being dull, saying something flew into the sky, not falling from it. The dude doesn't want to believe this, and Alphen cuts in, telling them that the phenomenon must have been caused by Aster. Back in the woods, Aster is blown away by how powerful the sword is, but Hifrid corrects him, telling him that his magic is what is extraordinary, and not the sword itself. He mentions that there has never been a single person possessing the seven-wing crest throughout the entire history of the Elmheim family lineage. Hifrid believes that Aster will have the power to surpass even Roderick once he masters his power. However, the power also has what it takes to sow seeds of conflict because of its greatness. He lets Aster know that everyone will be after him if they find out that he possesses the seven wings. He says there will be some who will want to exploit him, and there will be some who would want to kill him under the guise that he is a nuisance. Hifrid then urges Aster to make sure he becomes really strong while he still can to avoid something like this. Aster agrees with his father because he is not ready to live a miserable life, just like he did in his previous one. Aster then thanks his father for the gift, assuring him that he is going to master the seven wings and the sword. 3 days later, Kudo and Malfa returned from the Night Academy. Kudo stretches out her hand, waiting for her younger sisters to rush over to her, but the two run past her and head to Malfa instead. Kudo is surprised that she was ignored, and when she challenges the two about this, they tell her that she is always messing up their hair. However, Kudo doesn't want to accept that a modest person like her would do such a thing. Just then, she spots Alphen and rushes over to hug her. She ends up doing what she claims she doesn't do by roughing up Alphen's hair. Malfa then asks her parents where Aster is. Hifrid then reveals where Aster is, and Kudo immediately locks in on this. Meanwhile, Aster is still struggling to keep the sword under control. He is suffering from excessive magic power loss just from trying to do this, and he starts wondering what he has to do to become like his father. He is in the middle of this when Kudo shows up with her sword, telling Aster that he has managed to outdo himself this time around. Aster is shocked to see that his sister is back, and Kudo scolds him for not coming over to welcome her. Kudo asks him if he didn't show up to welcome them because he thinks he is special and there is no reason to notice them. Kudo lets Aster know that she learned about what happened at the sword dance assembly because the Night Academy was buzzing with rumors about him. Aster then replies that he is pretty sure that the same thing applies to his sister because he heard that, as a trainee, she has completed numerous missions. In addition, Kudo was the only knight awarded the honorary knight medal that year. Kudo then replies that it is the least she can do because if she doesn't, she wouldn't be able to succeed her father. She then proceeds to say she heard about how Aster turned down the offer to be the successor. She asks him if he did this for her sake. Deep down, Aster is not pleased with the fact that Hifrid went ahead to tell her because this is just going to cause him unnecessary trouble. Aster finally replies to his sister, telling her that he believed that he wasn't worthy yet, which is why he rejected the offer. Kudo walks toward a tree, talking about how spiteful Aster and Hifrid are, even though they know that it is her dream to become the head of the house. Suddenly, she cuts the tree with her sword before hurling it toward Aster. Aster barely dodges the attack while screaming at his sister, asking her what the hell she is trying to do. Kudo tells Aster that it's been a long time since they sparred, so she is about to give him a test. She lets him know that the next attack will be directed at him. Aster tries to tell his sister to chill out because the sword he is using is not yet complete, but Kudo lets him know that he won't be able to make the same excuse if he is on the battlefield while facing an enemy. Kudo lets Aster know that it is the knight's code to always be ready for battle, and Kudo immediately gets into an offensive position. She tells Aster that she might just obliterate him if he keeps holding back. Aster cannot believe his eyes because he is still trying to control his magic power, and his sister is already onto him. At the same time, he knows he has no choice but to take his sister seriously because if he doesn't, she might just kill him. Minutes later, Aster and Kudo are still going at it. Kudo commends Aster, telling him that he has gotten better because he is able to keep up with her, even though she has refined her skills at the Night Academy. However, she trolls Aster, telling him that his sword is pretty much pathetic and his control over magic is completely lacking. Kudo sends him into the distance with a strike, and Aster admits that his sister is as relentless as she has always been. He remembers that she's been like that since they were kids. He wonders if it is because he is the only male in the Viscount's house who holds the right of succession. At the same time, he doesn't know if it is because he possesses the seven-wing crest, which is superior to everyone else's. Aster compares her to a living storm because she is always challenging him to duel over every little thing while calling the world unfair. Basically, Kudo is his natural enemy. Kudo comes charging at him again while telling him that he is not fit to be the next head of the house. Meanwhile, Malfa is worried about the two, and she calls her father's attention to this. She asks him if he is ready to leave the two alone to themselves because, with the way things are going, one of them might just die. Hifrid tells Malfa that they are rivals in their own ways, and even though they might be a bit reckless, he is confident that it won't escalate to the point where one of them would die. Malfa replies that she certainly hopes so, and then asks her father why he summoned them back from the Night Academy. She is pretty sure that it is not all about the succession. Hifrid confirms this, and then brings out a letter which shocks Malfa. It turns out that it is a summons from the Elmheim main house. He tells Malfa that the elders who lead the house might actually want to see their grandson's face. Malfa is relieved to hear this, but Hifrid lets her know that in the worst-case scenario, they might actually lose Aster. Back in the woods, Aster urges his sister to try to reason with him because he has already turned down the talk of succession. He tells her that their father must have informed her about it, but Kudo reveals that Hifrid is not ready to agree with his stance. Aster soon finds himself trying to block Kudo's overwhelming attack, which he compares to facing a troll swinging a giant mallet. Aster almost gets cut, but he manages to weave Kudo's sword to the side. He screams at her, telling her to listen to what he has to say. However, Kudo hits him with a blunt strike that is powerful enough to rupture his insides. Aster coughs up blood with the realization that his sister is pretty strong. Kudo then explains to him that he is third-rate if all he can do is swing a sword. In addition, he is second-rate if he can handle only magic, and it is when he is able to master both sword and magic that he can become first-rate. Kudo lets him know that she is disappointed in him because the difference in wing crests refers to the difference in the amount of mana that one can handle. Basically, the difference between one wing is about a threefold gap in power, which means in terms of magical output and stamina, Kudo should be inferior to Aster since she has just 5 wings. Because of this, Kudo scolds Aster, telling him that he should have been able to withstand all of her attacks, but he chose to run back to his favorite swordsmanship instead. Kudo asks Aster if he really distrusts his power that much, or if he's afraid he would go berserk just like he did some years back. The moment Aster hears this, he realizes that he has never once considered that he might be afraid of the 7 wings' power. He wonders if he was unconsciously putting a limit on his own power, which is why the blade feels unstable. He was basically forcibly suppressing his magic under the fear that things might go out of hand. Kudo then tells Aster that he basically has everything she ever wanted, and she lunges at him, telling him to give her all of his power if he is so afraid to let it out. However, things are already different as Aster easily knocks her back with his magic power. Even Kudo is shocked to see this, and Aster thanks her, telling her that she has opened his eyes. Aster then dashes toward Kudo without manifesting a blade, leaving Kudo to wonder if he has run out of mana, but she trashes this thought because she is pretty sure that he hasn't. Aster basically has an inexhaustible magic lying inside the 7 wings, and even though he can't fully master it yet, he plans to focus all of the magic into an immediate impact at that moment. He lands his hit, but Kudo blocks it while teasing him, telling him that it is commendable that he was able to think of something like that on his feet. Aster then lets his sister know that he has no intention of wasting his second life, his power, his sword, and certainly not his family. He reveals that he is going to hold on to all of these because he struggled to have them in the past. Kudo is left confused by what her brother means by the second life he is talking about. Suddenly, Aster leaps toward her, and she prepares a counterattack for him. Suddenly, Aster vanishes, and by the time he reappears, he lets his sister know that he is no longer holding back. He swings really hard at Kudo, and Kudo feels the sword passing through her midsection like she has been cut in half. Later on, Kudo wakes up in her room, and she is confused as to how she made it into her room. Surprisingly, Malfa is in her room, and she welcomes Kudo back to life. It then dawns on Kudo that she was in the middle of a duel, and she asks Malfa what happened. Malfa reveals that Aster was the one who carried her back to the estate, revealing that Kudo had fallen asleep during the duel. Aster believed that the fatigue from the journey had caught up to her, but Kudo disagreed with this. Kudo then remembers that moment in the duel where it appeared that Aster had cut her down. She realizes that Aster dispelled his mana blade just in time before impact. She figures out that what she felt was the lingering residue of the mana passing through her body. She heaves a sigh of relief that Aster wouldn't have killed her in the first place, since they are siblings. However, at that moment, she actually feared that Aster would kill her. Kudo cannot take away the idea that her brother is really spiteful, even though he is smaller than she is. Kudo then grabs her sword, demanding to know where Aster is because the duel is not yet over. Malfa shocks her by telling her that Aster is no longer in the estate. Kudo is confused by this, and Malfa lets her know that a summons arrived for Aster from the main house, which is why he left a little while ago with their father. Kudo freaks out in shock because no one said anything about this to her. Meanwhile, Aster and Hifrid are in a carriage, heading to the main house. Hifrid tells him that the people they are about to meet are the elders who support the Elmheim house from the shadows. He mentions that they are former heads of the main and branch families, which means that they are influential figures from across the Elmheim house. Hifrid assures Aster that they are still pretty much in control, even though they have retired, which is why they are known as the Shadow Rulers. Hifrid tells Aster that these rulers haven't even shown any interest in Aster since the day he adopted him, leaving him confused as to why they have suddenly summoned him. Aster tells his father that it is most likely because of what happened at the Sword Dance Festival. He continues by saying he's heard that the Elmheim elders value the family's prestige more than gold or even their own lives. Apparently, anyone who tarnishes this image is thrown into a cage to become food for beasts. Hifrid is shocked that Aster knows this, and he asks him where he heard it. Aster gives a nervous reply that doesn't answer the question before revealing that he has prepared himself for some form of punishment or exile at the very least. Hifrid asks him if he is sure that he is ready to leave without saying goodbye, and Aster assures him that he is. He mentions that he was already planning to leave the moment his sisters arrived. In addition, he is pretty sure that Kudo doesn't like it when he is around because he annoys her, which means she will be able to relax once he is gone. Aster adds that thanks to Kudo, he has finally started to get the hang of handling Graham, and he is convinced that he can draw out more of the Seven Wings power than before. He tells his father not to try to help him from that moment forward, no matter what happens, because he is prepared to survive on his own. Suddenly, Kudo shows up by the window of the carriage, telling Aster that he is the youngest, so he doesn't have to act all high and mighty. Aster is shocked to see his sister, who is hanging by the carriage like a bug. Kudo flings the door open, and Aster is shocked that the redhead ran all the way to catch up to them. Kudo scolds Aster, telling him that it is cruel of him to have left his sister without a single word. Kudo mentions that he heard that he has been summoned by the great elders of the main house, which is a big thing, since she and Malfa haven't even been called up before. Hifrid then tells Kudo that he can't take her along to the main house, and she assures him that she is aware of this, which is why their father recalled them from the academy because he wants them to watch over things while he is away. Kudo adds that she is aware that the summons means he is in a situation that requires a great deal of caution. In fact, Malfa said there is the possibility that Aster might not even come back. Aster tries to tone down the gravity of the situation, telling Kudo that she is just exaggerating because he is just going there to talk. Deep down, Aster knows that his safe return is not guaranteed. Kudo then tells Aster that she absolutely hates his guts because he is a boy, he has the 7 wings, he is always given special treatment. He is even stronger than her, even though she is older, and he can act like a grown-up, even though he is her little brother. Kudo admits that she hates everything, but nonetheless, Kudo says she can't throw away the fact that Aster is her family. Kudo tells Aster that he might act all tough and grown up, but it doesn't remove the fact that he is her little brother. Kudo urges Aster to make sure he comes back to the estate because she still wants them to duel, and as she leaves, she assures Aster that she is not going to make it easy for him the next time. She leaps out of the carriage, and Aster watches as she leaves, wondering what it is that she came to say. Nonetheless, he is thankful for her, and he makes the silent decision to return to the family. Kudo stands behind the carriage and waves at it as it gets farther away, showing just how much she cares about her little brother. Soon afterward, they arrive at the main house, and they are welcomed by armed guards. They tell Hifrid that the elders are already waiting for him inside, and Hifrid tells them that there is no need for them to escort him because he knows his way around. However, the guards let him know they have been ordered to ensure that they bring him and Aster to the waiting room. With this, Hifrid confirms that he and Aster were not summoned because they wanted to have a good time with their grandchild. Nonetheless, it still brings back memories of the last time he was home. As they walk through the lobby, Hifrid urges Aster not to lose his cool because it would be the worst day for him to flare up in anger. Aster replies that he would behave himself as long as they don't say anything or do anything that warrants him to be angry. Hifrid agrees to this and tells Aster that it is the same reason he is trying to tell him that the person they are about to meet is the problem. While revealing who it is that they want to meet, Aster is completely carried away with those in the training grounds. Hifrid is forced to call his name to jerk him back to reality. Upon arriving at the door, the two are required to surrender their weapons. The moment they enter the room, they are welcomed by the elder, who teases Hifrid for not coming to the house for the past 10 years. Hifrid then bows to the old man, whom he addresses as his great-grandfather, the 6th head of the house. Aster finally realizes who has been controlling things from the shadows, the great-grandfather, Zenith Elmheim. Aster also believes that the rest of the gang are heavyweights who have the deciding factor over Elmheim. With a quick look, he realizes that there are some people from the sword dance assembly who are present, but he is surprised that Roderick is not there. Zenith can see the confused look on his face, and he tells him that Roderick is not there. He reveals that Roderick is the leader of the knights directly under the royal family, which means he has no time for all the meaningless meetings that they are holding. In return, Zenith and the other old farts are the ones handling the administrative side of things. Aster remembers that in his past life, he never saw Zenith, which is why he didn't really care, but he can clearly see the influence that he holds because he is still able to gather so many important fellows to a meeting. Hifrid then asks Zenith why they are there, and Zenith replies that he is pretty sure that he has figured it out already. Zenith mentions that he heard that Aster caused quite a scene at the sword dance festival. This immediately confirms Aster's suspicion that they were summoned because of what he did. Hifrid then tells Zenith that Roderick should have settled what happened personally. The elders present in the room tell Hifrid that what Roderick did was nothing more than a performance for the public, and it doesn't change the fact that the Elmheim name has been tarnished. One adds that inviting Aster, who is an adoptee from an unknown origin, to the family gathering is a mistake from the start. They tell Hifrid that they would have looked the other way if he had remained harmless, but the moment he bared his fangs at the main family, it changed the entire dynamic of things. Zenith mentions that the right thing is to exile Aster, but lets Hifrid know that he is also going to be punished. It is at this moment that Aster gets on his feet to scream at the elders, telling them that he was the one who did everything, and it has nothing to do with his father. Aster is crashing out when he turns to the side to see that his father is not even saying anything. Aster stops talking, wondering what is wrong with him. The elders then scold Aster, telling him that he is indisciplined because he had the guts to butt into an adult conversation. Zenas then stands up to tell Aster that everyone in the room carries the weight of the house on their shoulders. However, he reveals that the knights are not a monolith because there are countless others watching from the shadows, waiting for a chance to snatch the top seat. Zenas mentions that this doesn't exclude those in the room. Zenas walks toward Aster, telling him that they need proof he is not a threat to the house. Zenas then pulls out a sword, which he hands over to Hifrid. He reminds him of what he did when he failed to protect the king, which ended up dragging the family's name through the mud. It turns out that it was in this same room that he allowed Roderick to cut down his arm. This time around, Zenas tells Hifrid that he wants him to show his loyalty by taking Aster's head. Zenas assures Hifrid that if he does this, the matter will be dropped. But he hasn't finished saying this when Hifrid tells him that he is not interested in taking Aster's life. Hifrid tells the old man that he would rather take his own life than cut down his own child. Aster is shocked when he hears this, and Zenas tells Hifrid that he has to die since he has refused to kill Aster. In fact, Zenas ultimately declares that it is the end for Hifrid's house because everyone, down to his children, will be killed. Just then, Aster coldly asks Zenas what it is that he is so afraid of. Zenas turns back in confusion, and Aster continues by saying they are all a group of grown men who are huddled together in fear, which is really pathetic. Aster tells Zenas that they are free to exile him if they are so scared that he would come back to hunt them. Just then, Aster takes off his shirt to reveal his 7 wings to let the group know what they are going to be facing if they intend to touch his family. The entire room is left in shock, and deep down, Aster can only apologize to his father because even though he was told to keep quiet, he couldn't. With the crests on his back shining brightly, Aster tells the room that it would be best for them to think twice before making an enemy of him. The elders and guards don't want to believe what is right in front of them, and they even assume that it is fake because this is the first time it will appear on a human body in hundreds of years. With a cold voice, Zenas asks Aster if he understands the weight of the mark that he carries, and Aster assures him that he knows because he's heard that people get more surprised the more wings that one has. The Earl, who remains on his seat, laughs out loud when he hears this, but quickly offers his apologies before telling them to continue their charade. Zenas then explains to Aster that a crest is an organ that generates magical power, which was gifted to humans by spirits in ancient times. Humans have been able to make use of their strength pretty well by passing it down generations, but no human has been able to reach 7 wings, with the sole exception of the Spirit Clan, the progenitors of the crests themselves. Aster then asks Zenas if he is suggesting that he is a member of the Spirit Clan, and Zenas says there is a possibility if it is actually true that his wings are real. Aster replies to the old man, telling him that he is Hifrid's son, and at the moment, he doesn't care about the circumstances of his birth. Aster tells Zenas that all he wants to know is if he is prepared to have him as an enemy or not. Aster mentions that there would be plenty of noble houses ready to take him in if there is ever a chance that he is expelled from Elmheim. Aster lets Zenas know that this would be bad for him because they are scared of rebellion already, which means it would be better to keep him around, since he is the symbol of the 7 wings, who surpasses even the great Roderick. Everyone is left speechless by everything Aster just said, and deep down, Aster knows how to play his game. He remembers the old man talking about a rebellion, and it is no joke that a rebellion is actually coming. It is a massive civil war that will engulf the entire country, and since he already knows what is going to happen thanks to his past life, Aster is prepared to know at that moment who is an ally or an enemy so that the Viscount house can survive. Zenas finally scoffs and asks Aster if he thinks he is that important. He mentions that there is no proof whatsoever that the 7 wings he carries are real, and Aster tells him that he is free to kill him if he doesn't believe him. However, he lets him know that this will only mean war between him and the elders. Deep down, Aster knows that Elmheim would have no issues killing him if they really want to, but he wants to see if they are going to take the bait or not. Just then, the Earl, Maze, claps his hand and gets off his seat, telling Zenas that it would be better if they set a trial for Aster. The elders scream at Maze, asking him what he is trying to say, and Maze asks them if they are ready to see the power of the 7 wings or not. They ask him what he means by this, and he reminds them that they are in the greatest martial clan, which means there must be a couple of suitable trials lying around in the estate. Seeing this, Aster immediately figures out that Maze is an ally. Surprisingly, the old man agrees to Maze's suggestion, and he tells Aster to follow him because disciplining a grandson who doesn't know how to hold his tongue is his duty as his grandfather. Moments later, they arrive at the trial grounds, which are somewhat dark. Zenas shows Aster an underground path that leads to the waterways, which used to be an evacuation shelter for emergencies, but Zenas now keeps a magic beast locked in there. Zenas tells Aster that the trial is simple and it is for him to defeat the magic beast. Hifrid sighs in frustration, and he reminds Aster that he told him to keep the existence of the 7 wings a secret, but Aster lets his father know that he can't continue keeping something so flashy a secret forever. As he rappels down the hole, Hifrid tells him not to let his guard down. Aster's eyes lock with Maze's, and he can see the interest in his eyes as he goes down the underground path. Upon getting to the bottom, Aster notices something cold, and this is when he sees Dallas's head lying around on the ground. This shocks him to his bones, and Zenith reveals that he also gave Dallas the chance to redeem his honor, but he did nothing but cry until the very end, which was quite unbearable to watch. Zenith urges Aster not to disappoint him, and just then a blue magical beast appears right in front of Aster, and it lets out a loud roar that lets Aster know that he is truly up for a serious trial. Even though Dallas was quite annoying, Aster actually pities him. Just then, the beast comes dashing at Aster, but he cuts it into pieces with just a swing of his sword, leaving the spectators speechless. Aster sheathes his sword, admitting that the beast might be scary, but his sister is scarier. Suddenly, something strange happens, and by the time Aster turns around, he realizes that the beast is back together, which means it is a freaking undead. Hifrid screams out in fear, asking Zenith why such a terrifying beast is lying around in the basement of the estate. Zenith then reveals that the undead are drawn to the scent of death, and it must have thought it could have the best life in the estate, which is why it crawled to the basement. Since the beast won't die if one cuts it 1,000 times, Zenith had it captured, thinking it would be the perfect opponent to test one's strength. Zenith says it is thanks to this that they no longer have trouble disposing of corpses. One of the elders expresses his fear, revealing that an undead is a handful for even a skilled knight to capture, but Zenith is clearly telling Aster to kill it. They ask Zenith if he intends to watch the child of the Seven Wings die, but Zenith tells them that it would mean Aster is a fake if he actually dies to the beast. Zenith then adds that even if Aster dies, it only makes things convenient for them because there are ways. Maze, on the other hand, is worried, and he hopes that Aster does his best not to die. Back in the basement, Aster has slashed the beast loads of time, but there is no progress whatsoever. The beast's regenerative power is overwhelming compared to that of a normal undead. In addition, an undead is already dead, which means to kill it completely, one either burns it to death with sunlight, or one must purify it with a weapon imbued with holiness. And if one cannot do either, it is advised to just run away because fighting an undead is pretty useless. However, in Aster's case, he knows that there is no path for retreat. He figures out that using conventional means doesn't complement the fact that he has the Seven Wings power residing in him. This basically means he has to crush the undead with overwhelming force to show them what he is capable of. Aster unleashes a powerful attack that leaves the elders jumping in their seats because they are finally getting to see the power of the Seven Wings. Aster's last attack leaves a cloud of dust that surrounds the basement, leaving the spectators wondering what is happening. By the time the dust clears off, the beast is still active, and before Aster can react, the beast knocks him to the ground. Hifrid calls his name in fear, and Maze urges Hifrid not to try to jump in to save Aster. Hifrid asks the Earl if he is suggesting that he watch his son die, but Maze tells him to calm down and have a look at what is going on. Maze can see the smile on Aster's face, and he believes that he has a trump card he hasn't used yet. With the beast on top of him, Aster raises his sword and imbues it with mana, firing off a powerful energy blast into his body just like his father did in the woods. The beast coughs out blood as its insides are ruptured by the blast. Since the beast has refused to die, Aster plans to keep peeling away its life force until it finally dies. Hifrid is shocked when he sees what Aster is doing because he only showed him that method once, but he is even taking it to another level. Thanks to the amount of energy that Aster is firing off, the whole area starts to shake, as if it is about to collapse. Some of the elders want to run away in fear and they call Zenith to join them, but Zenith is totally immersed in what he is watching. Zenith is blown away by the overwhelming power emanating from Aster's body, and he finally understands the power of the Seven Wings. Moments later, the panicking elders finally get back on their feet when there is no rumbling again. They rushed over to check what had happened, but Zenith didn't move an inch, and he witnessed everything. He realizes that Aster caught the undead in a vortex of magical power and wiped them out. Zenith can only agree that it was a brute force display of pure quality as well as quantity, which is an incredible magical feat, but doesn't essentially qualify as a technique. This leaves Zenith wondering if this is really the power of the Seven Wings. Zenith then asks Hifrid if he was the one who taught Aster what he just did, but Hifrid says no. He admits that he is also amazed at how much his son grows by the day. Maze quickly asks the elder if he is satisfied and if he believes that Aster has passed the exam. With a stern face and expression, Zenith asks the rest of the group if there is anyone who objects, but none do. Maze wastes no time announcing to Aster that he passed the test and that he should return to the surface quickly. Aster teases them, pointing out the fact that the chain that lowered him into the underground basement has been destroyed, so he urges someone to throw a rope for him to use. Later on, Aster meets with Zenith in his office, and Zenith offers him a spot in the succession to the head of the family, but Aster rejects the offer. Zenith asks him if he is sure that this is what he wants because the moment he misses this chance, it might not come back. Aster lets the man know that he has no interest in the succession struggle of the family, and in addition, his presence would only cause unrest among his cousins. Aster tells Zenis that he doesn't belong in the main estate, but in Hefried's manor. Just then, Zenis tells him that he can be humble all he wants, but he cannot hide the ambition reflected in his eyes. Zenis says it is all over his face that he intends to turn his hostility toward Elmheim in the long run, and this shocks Aster. Zenis asks him if the person he is after is Roderick, but Aster's expression immediately becomes defensive. The old man urges him to relax, assuring him that he has no intention of probing into his motives at the moment. Aster then asks him why, because he believes that the rebels are his enemies. Zenis then reminds him that the house is not a monolith and Roderick is a bit of a problem. Zenis has no issue having Aster around if his existence serves as a deterrent to Roderick. However, he warns Aster never to bare his fangs at him again because this is where he might actually die. As Aster leaves the room, he cannot help but admit that the old man is a monster. Hefried meets him in the hallway and he asks him what the old man said. Aster reveals that the old man wanted to induct him into the main family, but he refused the offer. Hefried is shocked to hear this, and even Maze, who is with him, agrees. Maze tells Aster that he would have enjoyed much better treatment if he were officially under the main family's care. Aster then asks the Earl why he helped him earlier, but Maze feigns ignorance on this. Maze claims that he only wanted to play a trick on him, and he reminds Aster that he has truly become the master of the 7 wings in name. As they walk through the hallway, Aster can see the elders staring at him, and they all have the same intention of getting Aster under their thumbs since he is a child. Maze tells Aster that he cannot avoid it because those targeting him will only increase since the 7 wings carry immense importance. Aster then asks Maze if he is one of them, and Maze replies that he is a director at the Night Academy, so scouting promising youths is part of his job. Maze points to the blonde old man in the distance, telling Aster that the man is also the same. As Maze walks off, he tells Aster that he will be waiting for him to enroll at the Night Academy. Aster watches in confusion because he can't even say if the dude is an ally or not because he is too elusive. Hefried then pats Aster on the shoulder, suggesting that they head home because he would like to hear all about his big performance. Aster agrees and says his mother is going to freak out by the time she sees all of his injuries. Meanwhile, Roderick gets a report that his son, Dallas, has lost his life in the trial imposed by Zenis. Since Aster was scheduled to take one too, Roderick asks the messenger what transpired. The dude then informs Roderick about the existence of the 7 wings, but Roderick is not entirely surprised. Basically, they have been maintaining a power balance in the house for so long, but at this point he believes that it might finally collapse. The dude suggests that they take some kind of action, but Roderick tells him not to do anything because it is not a threat yet. In addition, he doesn't think there is any reason to rush since the 7 wings will be his eventually. However, until then, he is going to let Aster play freely with it because he wants to enjoy watching how Aster, who escaped him 10 years ago, struggles for a while. 4 years later, Aster heads to the Night Academy, and the official calls the applicants to gather. While everyone is filling out the forms, they notice Aster walk past, and their attention immediately shifts to him since he has gotten somewhat popular. Aster walks to the desk to register his name, and the official tells him that he would have to present his wing crest because they can't let anyone who doesn't have magic through, since they don't want anyone faking it. Suddenly, the official reads Aster's name, and he is shocked at his last name, which is Elmheim. Aster then smiles at him, asking if he still has to show his crest because his crest is actually in a place where it is somewhat hard to reach. With a smirk on his face, he asks the official if his face is enough to get him in. Later on, Aster is minding his own business when a blonde-haired troublemaker, Smites, starts calling him. He tells Aster that he has never seen him among the applicants before, while asking Aster if he hasn't come to the wrong place. Smites tells Aster that the exam is for the elite of the elites, and Aster just walks past him, telling him that there is no problem if that is the case. Smites yells at Aster, telling him that everyone in the hall has gone through rigorous training and has come back to take the exam repeatedly. He mocks Aster, telling him that he is going around dangling a kid-sized sword, ultimately dreaming of an elite path. Smites continues by telling Aster that the exam is not for people like Aster, and he casually tells him to get lost if he is only there to sightsee. Meanwhile, the other applicants are not surprised by this because this is how Smites treats newcomers every year. In addition, they can't believe that he is seriously messing with Aster of the 7 wings. Smites is totally oblivious to who Aster is, and just then, Grian and his lackeys show up on the scene. Grian greets Aster, his cousin, telling him that it's been a while. Aster offers his condolences about Dallas, but Grian tells Aster that he doesn't need to worry about Dallas because he is a disgrace who needed to die. In fact, he feels refreshed and glad that Dallas is gone because he was always acting high and mighty because he was a year older. Grian then tells Aster not to underestimate those of them in the main family, even though he has the 7 wings to boast about, because there is no one in the academy to protect him. After saying this, Grian and his gang walk off, but the candidates are only impressed that there are 2 members of the Elmheim family present, which means it is a good year. It is at this point that Smites realizes that he's screwed, and he quickly walks up to Aster, acting all nice. Aster returns the gesture as he smiles at Smites, telling him that he can call him by his name. Not long after this, they report to the first exam venue, and the official taking charge of the exam welcomes all of them. He lets them know that the royal knights are different from the local knights who run rampant in the countryside. He continues by saying they protect the king and they are honored swords who risk their lives for the king, which means they have no need for useless people. He tells them to consider the day's exam as a battlefield, and they are expected to show their true worth to their heart's content. Deep down, Aster can't believe the nonsense that the dude is saying, but he doesn't really care because he's finally made it back to the academy again. Back when he was wingless, he wasn't even given the opportunity to stand right where he was. Basically, beyond that point is a world of the strong that he was never able to reach, and the man who stays at the top is Roderick. Aster urges Roderick to wait for him because he is going to catch up to him in no time. However, to do this first, he has to break through the selection exam, and just then, the official declares the exam open. Suddenly, one of the applicants is sent to the ground with an arrow piercing his head. This immediately tells the applicants that the exam is not a joke, and the officials reveal that the exam is called the Trial of the Turret. He lets them know that those who stand at the end will be the winners. In no time, a barrage of arrows starts raining down on the applicants standing in the hall. Some of the applicants panic and try to run, but the arrow still catches them. Other applicants, on the other hand, form a group to protect themselves, and these are former applicants who are already used to the system. However, even with this, the survival rate is still about 30%, and he believes that their method to form a circle will soon reach its limit. Basically, what they are hoping to see is the overwhelming power that only someone with a wing crest can achieve. Suddenly, some of the applicants notice that Aster is not moving, and they believe that he is an idiot who must have frozen up in fear. Grion also thinks it is the end of the line for Aster, but the moment some arrows come flying at him, Aster easily repels all of them. The applicants are left in shock when they see Aster create a whirlwind with his magic power just to repel the arrows. Aster keeps this up, leaving the other applicants to start asking what kind of monster he is because not a single arrow is reaching him. Even the official is impressed because Aster is basically manipulating his mana to make it seem like he is in a storm. Soon afterward, the rain of arrows stops, and the official is surprised that more people actually survived than he expected. The official commends the survivors, telling them that they have passed the first trial, unlike the corpses lying all around them. However, he lets them know that there is no time to rest because he is going to guide them to the next trial grounds. Smites sighs in frustration, talking about how the official is sent straight from hell. Aster is surprised that Smites is already exhausted from the mere arrows that were thrown at them. Smites, on the other hand, cannot believe that Aster is acting totally unfazed, as if nothing happened. Even the official is impressed that there is no sign of tiredness in Aster, even though he just used a whole lot of mana, and this just proves the power of the 7 wings, but he is curious to see how Aster is going to fare in the next trial. Grion, on the other hand, is pissed that his cousin survived, and he remembers getting an order from a certain someone who told him to make sure he does everything in his power to prevent Aster from becoming a royal knight for the future of Elmheim. Upon arriving at the next trial grounds, the official tells them that they will exchange their swords for identical swords to ensure fairness. Smites is confused about the whole thing, and Aster asks him if it was different before, and Smites says they have never worried about their swords. Smite suggests that they might be cautious because of Aster's weird sword. Just then, Grion shows up, teasing Aster, telling him that it appears that he has found a lackey for himself, which is Smites. Smites is pissed when he hears this, but Grion quickly intimidates him by whispering in his ears, telling him that he is going to learn a painful lesson if he wags his tail at the wrong person. Smites shakes up in fear, and he tries to get Grion to take back what he said, but Grion ignores him. Smites even goes as far as telling Grion that he has nothing to do with Aster. Aster looks around and realizes that he is in a hostile environment. Just then, the official shows up to explain the rules to them. He tells them that the second trial is a siege battle, and they will be divided into 3 teams to battle for control over each other's camps within the forest. He mentions that a camp is considered to be occupied when one's team flag is raised on its flagpole. He explains that the team occupying 2 or more camps by the time the evening bell rings will be the victor. However, any action that renders the flag unusable, such as destroying or confiscating them, is prohibited. Aside from this, there are no other prohibited actions, and they are free to use the swords given to them because they can even kill their enemies with them. After saying the rules, the officials tell them that it is time to announce the team members who will be participating in the trials with them. Soon afterward, the smoke signal goes up in the air, and this is a signal that the trial has begun. Basically, there are 3 flags per team, and they need to capture at least 2 camps, including their own. Smites tells Aster that this can only mean that out of the 3 teams, there will only be 1 winner. Aster confirms this and asks Smites if there is anything he is worried about, and other team members point out that this means they would have to fight Elmheim. Aster immediately realizes that things are about to go south. Smites mentions that they are terrified of Elmheim's retaliation because their opponent is Grion, the young master of the main Elmheim family. Smites tells Aster to imagine a scenario where they point a sword at Grion during the trial. Smites fears that the blowback might be bad and can even cause their entire families to be wiped out. Smites lets Aster know that they are all scared of making an enemy of Elmheim. Smites ends it by telling Aster that there is always a next trial, so it is better they wait till then instead of throwing their lives away. In the end, Aster is left to compete alone in a team battle. Nonetheless, he understands the fear of Smites and the others because Elmheim is truly terrifying. They are basically a family of tyrants that cannot be defied. In the trials, Grion is the symbol of that fear. Even though his team members believe that he wouldn't understand this, he is just like them from an outsider's point of view. As he continues toward the nearest flag, he notices that everywhere is quiet, leaving him to wonder if no one has engaged each other in combat yet. It is either that they are being cautious, or there's another game at play. Just then, he finds the dude with the yellow flag, and the dude expresses his surprise that Aster actually came just like the person of interest predicted. Aster wonders what the dude is saying, and in addition, he notices that he has taken down his own camp's flag. The dude then throws his yellow flag in the air, and just then, the red flag, which is the symbol of Grion's team, appears in the distance. Suddenly, it dawns on Aster that the red flag team and the yellow flag team are working together to take him down, with Grion leading the charge.